The following is an excerpt from the book Experiences of Thought by Anthony Kahn, available now on Amazon.com and Kindle. That old-time religion, if I were in your shoes. If I were in your shoes, I would have done things quite differently. Or, I wouldn't have done that if I were you. How often have you heard such an utterance? Let it be stated here and now that these kinds of statements are born out of a logical fallacy. Be assured that if you were another person, you would have done things exactly as they did. What defines a human being? What is the source of their character and choices? At the deepest philosophical level, there is no simple or definitive answer. But there is one thing of which we can be quite confident. You do not get to decide who you are. How can you decide who you are before you exist? Okay, so you don't get to decide who you are, but you do get to decide your actions, right? Yes, you do, but you decide them. An entity that is indeed you, but yet not of your own creation. To understand this point more clearly, let us run with the scientific version of you, i.e., the product purely of biology. You did not get to determine your biology, you simply inherited a particular mix of genes from your parents. So, you had no input in creating your biological self. But there is more than just biology that defines the self, even from the perspective of science, for there is the impact of environment and the experiences that it leads you to have. But we largely do not pick our environment or even our experiences, and when we do have that luxury, we choose them in consequence of our biological makeup. Even if we instead adopt a more spiritual outlook and we introduce the concept of the soul or spirit, you still run into the same fact. You simply cannot create yourself where you did not exist before. It is a logical impossibility. You have freedom of choice, but only within the bounds of who you came into existence to be. Now, we have diverged a little from our central topic of religion here and into the realm of pure philosophy. But it is important that we do so at this point. Religion is brimming with the ramifications of actions and the just consequences that must inevitably follow. But can it be just to punish a being who is forced to act in accordance with the way that they have been created? There is a comical incident in the history of London where the produce of London's worshipful company of spectacle makers is condemned to be ceremoniously smashed upon London stone. A deserved punishment for their having been created imperfectly. But does the fault lie with the spectacles alone, or should their creators bear the real responsibility? And what is just punishment for that matter? What is the difference between justice and vengeance? Often not a lot, it must be said. An individual inflicts harm in return for a perceived slight, and that is termed vengeance. When governments do it on our behalf, then it is called justice. But why is it fair to punish anyone at all, when ultimately they must act in accordance with their personality? Arguably, it's not fair, but rather it's a logical necessity that we must reap that which we have sown, even if not in the way that might be expected. It is important to realize, however, that the suffering that results inevitably provides us with an opportunity to learn from our mistakes. The eye for an eye mentality of Hammurabi's code should be left to the annals of history. But if measured suffering is caused solely for the purpose of growth, then it is born out of love and not hate. That kind of punishment is the only kind that deserves to be treated as anything other than vengeance. A truly loving creator must see the worth in all creation and understand the shortcomings that we all have as we continue to learn and grow. The parent does not detest or disown the child because they err out of lack of understanding. And indeed, all errant thought and behavior ultimately arises out of lack of understanding. Thus, it is reasonable that a loving creator would allow us to experience the consequences of our mistakes so that we can grow from them. Eternal damnation, on the other hand, well, you will have to make sense of that for yourself.